Welcome to today's critique, where we'll be looking at a 30-day language shadowing practice that utilizes a peer interaction format and highly practical everyday vocabulary to help hesitant learners overcome translation habits and speak naturally. And jumping right in, I have to say, the material is just remarkably strong in its empathy, effectively normalizing the very real anxiety language learners feel when their minds go blank.
The dual host dynamic effectively normalizes speaking anxiety, but the progression from a hesitant state to confident execution feels slightly rushed for a resource targeting absolute beginners.
I mean, I can definitely see the intention behind having the proxy learner succeed quickly to build momentum for the audience. But I wonder if this rapid success paradoxically risks making the actual high anxiety listener feel left behind if they're still struggling.
Yeah, that is exactly the trap here. The weakness is that the proxy learner transitions from entirely freezing in real life to perfectly executing future tense grammar, like flawlessly using "we're going to" and jumping into full dialogues almost instantaneously.
Right, it's like overnight mastery.
Exactly. It completely lacks the realistic friction of learning, which might inadvertently alienate high-anxiety learners who do not experience such rapid, in-session mastery.
Because if I'm sitting at home, stumbling over my words, and the proxy learner is just suddenly fluent, I'm going to feel like I'm already failing.
Precisely. It breaks the illusion of peer learning. The psychological mechanism at play here is what linguists call the affective filter.
Oh, right, the affective filter. Let's unpack that for a second, because we throw terms like mind blank around a lot. What actually happens in the brain when that filter goes up?
Well, when a highly hesitant learner is put on the spot, their brain immediately searches for a direct translation from their native language. They aren't thinking conceptually at all.
They're just flipping through a mental dictionary.
Exactly. And when they can't find that exact matching word, the amygdala, which is the brain's threat detection center, just fires up. Cortisol spikes.
Wow.
Yeah, and that stress hormone physically blocks the cognitive pathways needed to retrieve vocabulary. So the freeze isn't a lack of knowledge, it is an actual neurological traffic jam.
That makes so much sense. So, if our proxy learner never encounters that traffic jam, we aren't actually modeling the recovery process for the listener.
Right. So my suggestion here is to introduce intentional, realistic stumbling blocks during the actual role play segments that require the teacher to actively guide the student out of a freeze state.
Okay, I like that. Showing the messy reality of trying. What would that look like in practice?
So, as a concrete example, instead of the proxy learner immediately nailing the restaurant order, script a moment where they pause. Have them say something like, I want, and then have the teacher gently guide them toward the more natural, I would like.
Oh, yeah.
You need to show the psychological recovery process rather than just jumping straight to the successful end result.
That's a great adjustment, and it builds so much more trust because once we establish a realistic learner progression, we really must look at the actual pedagogy used to build that confidence, which in this case is ditching translation in favor of simple, shadowed sentences.
Right. The material actually does give excellent advice to avoid fancy words.
Yeah, like avoiding, I am exceedingly delighted and just using, I'm very happy. It's essentially taking off the training wheels of complex grammar to focus purely on conversational balance. But looking closely at the 99-sentence drill, is there a clash between the philosophy of flexible, natural English and the rigidity of the exercise itself?
Relying on simple sentences successfully reduces the listener's cognitive load, though the contrast between promoting natural dialogue and utilizing rigid repetition exercises creates a slight methodological friction.
It does feel a bit disconnected, yeah.
The core weakness is that the material preaches conversational flexibility, specifically noting that learners don't need to memorize one single answer, such as swapping "I am fine" for "I'm doing well, how about you?" Yet the core shadowing drill enforces single-path, textbook-style repetitions without any contextual branching.
Right, it's just this massive block of repeating things in a flat, sequential vacuum.
Exactly. And for a highly hesitant speaker trying to break the habit of mental translation, rote repetition can actually reinforce mechanical thinking.
Because they're just mimicking sound, right? They aren't actually processing the meaning.
Yeah, they bypass semantic processing completely, which is where meaning and emotion actually live in the brain.
So they file the phrase under, like, audio track 4 instead of filing it under politeness or hunger.
That is a perfect way to put it. So, the suggestion to fix this is to incorporate dynamic branching or emotional variations into the conversational rhythm of the shadowing practice to bridge the gap between rote repetition and fluid natural conversation.
Okay, I love the idea of emotional variations. Can you give a concrete example of how to implement that?
Sure. So, rather than having the listener shadow, "I'm doing well, thank you," in a flat, uniform tone, prompt them to shadow the phrase utilizing different emotions.
Like cheerfully and then maybe tiredly?
Exactly. The teacher could interject and say, "Now imagine you just got a promotion at work. Shadow this with energy. I'm doing well, thank you."
Oh, that's great. It forces them to feel the intent behind the words.
Right. And another concrete example is to shadow a rapid two-part exchange rather than isolated sentences. So the prompt could be, "How are you?" And the shadow is, "I'm doing well, and you."
Ah, so you're training the conversational pacing alongside the vocabulary.
Exactly. It eliminates that agonizing lag time where the translation habit usually kicks in and causes that cortisol spike we talked about earlier.
That makes total sense. But, putting that emotion into the shadowing drill requires the learner to actually know the words they are saying,
Yes, absolutely.
which makes me wonder about the overall pacing of the material. The material makes a strong case for practical utility by unpacking these vital nuances, like the difference between changing room and fitting room, or I am coming late versus I'm running late.
Very important distinctions.
They really are. I wonder, though, if placing this deep dive into vocabulary after the intense conversational drills disrupts the momentum and puts the cart before the horse?
These selected vocabulary items target highly practical everyday situations, yet their integration into the overall pacing of the lesson feels structurally disjointed.
Yeah, it definitely feels like things are happening slightly out of order.
The weakness here is that the explicit vocabulary breakdown, such as explaining reservations, bills versus checks, and hobbies, occurs after the intense shadowing drills and role plays.
Right. They do all the heavy lifting first.
Exactly. This means learners are forced to encounter and use the words in complex actions before formally unpacking their nuances and building confidence with their foundational meanings.
Which, for a high anxiety beginner, is just adding a massive amount of extraneous cognitive load. It's like asking someone to juggle 3 balls while simultaneously reading the instruction manual on how to juggle.
That is exactly what's happening, and working memory just can't handle that. The system freezes.
So, how do we restructure it?
The suggestion is straightforward. Front-load the targeted vocabulary and emphasize their practical utility before initiating the role plays, utilizing them as building blocks that organically climax in the overarching shadowing exercise.
I see. So, give them the tools before you put them in the sandbox.
Precisely. For a concrete example, introduce terms like reservation and bill or check at the very start of the material.
Okay.
Then, follow this immediately with the restaurant role play so the learner experiences an immediate aha moment by using the freshly learned vocabulary in context.
Oh, I love that. Because when the waiter asks, "Do you have a reservation?" the listener isn't scrambling to parse a completely unknown word. They literally just mastered it 5 minutes ago.
Exactly. It completely changes the emotional trajectory of the lesson. And then finally, cement those specific phrases during the rapid-fire shadowing section to close out the lesson with high energy.
Yeah, so it becomes this celebratory consolidation of everything they've just learned, rather than an overwhelming test of endurance.
It stops being a test and becomes a highly supportive, psychologically sound pathway to fluency.
I think that's a brilliant way to structure it. Well, to recap the main points of our critique today, we covered 3 core areas for improvement. First, the need to show realistic struggle in peer interactions to comfort high-anxiety learners and manage that affective filter.
Right.
Second, the opportunity to add emotional branching and 2-part volleys to shadowing drills to break those mental translation habits. And third, the structural benefit of front-loading practical vocabulary to improve overall pacing and reduce cognitive overload.
Exactly.
And we would warmly invite the creator to implement these actionable suggestions, try out these new approaches, and submit your revised work back to the critique for more feedback. We would love to hear how it evolves.
Absolutely. It's all about making sure that when the pressure is on, the mind doesn't have to freeze at all. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.